Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into the Israel Security Agency. You probably know it better as Shabak or Shin Bet.
Exactly. We got this pretty detailed document here
Mhm.
looking at, its history, how it's set up, what it actually does,
Right.
and yeah, some of the controversies too.
Right. And our mission really is to pull out the most important stuff, maybe the surprising bits, from this source to give you a proper handle on what this agency is all about.
Yeah, think of it as getting under the hood, understanding how this really key part of Israel's security system works, even though a lot of it happens, behind closed doors. We'll look at the origins, the structure, and some big moments that shaped it.
Okay, let's kick things off at the start. Our source says Shin Bet was officially founded February 1949, but the story goes back further, right?
It does, yeah. Its roots are in the Shai, which was the intelligence service for the Zionist groups before Israel even existed. Then in 48, right after independence, the first security setup was actually part of the IDF, the military. And its first director was Isser Harel, who, later became famous as the head of Mossad. So you see this early connection, internal and external intelligence kind of mixed initially, shows how things were still developing back then.
So it started in the military but didn't stay there.
Correct. Pretty soon, the responsibility for Shabak, for the Shin Bet, it moved. It went directly under the Prime Minister's office.
It says a lot.
It really does. It emphasizes just how critical they see internal security.
Yeah.
Right at the top level of government, direct line to the PM. It's like saying internal threats are a core national survival issue. Needs top oversight.
Makes sense. And the name's Shabak, Shin Bet. What's the Hebrew meaning there?
Okay, so Shabak, that's an acronym. It stands for Shirut Habitation Haklali. Roughly, Shirut Habitation Haklali means General Security Service.
General Security Service, right?
And Shin Bet is just shorter. Shirut Habitation, just Security Service. People use both pretty much interchangeably.
Got it. And their motto is powerful. Magen Vlo Yera, the unseen shield. That really sums up their whole approach, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Unseen shield. It perfectly captures what they do as the internal security service, working covertly, trying to stop threats before anyone even knows they're there.
And it's key to remember they're one of three main intelligence players in Israel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've got Amman, that's military intelligence, looking outwards at border threats mostly.
Yeah.
Then Mossad, focused on foreign intelligence gathering, operations abroad. Shin Bet's patch is firmly inside Israel.
Okay, so in practice, who does this unseen shield report to day to day, and how is it actually structured?
Right. Organizationally, like we said, direct report to the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And inside the agency, it's generally believed there are three main operational wings.
Okay, let's break those down a bit.
So first up, you have the Arab Department. Pretty self-explanatory, really. Their focus is counterterrorism involving Arab populations. So operating inside Israel itself, but also heavily in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. It's a massively complex area, constantly shifting.
Sounds incredibly challenging. Okay, what's the second wing?
Second is the Israel and Foreigners Department. It used to be called the Non-Arab Affairs Department. This one's about counterintelligence, stopping foreign spies. But interestingly, it also has this specific job of preventing subversion within the Jewish sector, sometimes called the Jewish Department.
Ah, okay.
And the source notes something interesting here. Initially, after 49, the big worry was the communist bloc, Soviet influence. But this department actually became more important again after the Soviet Union collapsed because there was a rise in Jewish extremist activity starting back in the early 80s.
That's fascinating. It shows that internal threats aren't always what you might expect or from where you expect them. And the third wing?
The third one is the Protective Security Department. Their role is protecting important people, government officials, VIPs, and also key locations. Think government buildings, embassies, airports, maybe sensitive research sites. This is probably the part of Shin Bet the public sees most, even if they don't realize it.
Right, the security details. So quite a broad range. What are their sort of core duties then?
Yeah, it's what safeguarding state security is the big umbrella term, obviously, but specifically. Uncovering terror networks, interrogating suspects, will definitely come back to that, providing intel for counter-terror ops. Then there's counter-espionage, like we mentioned, protecting senior officials, securing critical infrastructure, government buildings, and it even extends to Israeli airlines and embassies overseas. That counter-espionage role, by the way, was officially broadened right back in February 49, just after they formed. Shows it was seen as vital from day one.
Okay, so that gives us a much clearer picture of the what, but, any organization this old, especially in security, has a history full of, well, ups and downs. Let's get into some key moments, maybe start with some early successes.
Sure. One of the really famous early ones was getting hold of Khrushchev's secret speech in 1956, the one where he denounced Stalin.
Ah, yes, a huge moment in the Cold War.
Exactly. The story usually told is that a Polish version of the speech was passed to the Israeli embassy in Warsaw, apparently through someone linked to a Polish communist official's secretary. The Shabak person there got it back to Israel.
And then Israel shared it with the U.S.
That's the narrative, yeah.
Yeah.
A really big intelligence win, sharing that with the Americans at that time.
But our source kind of adds a wrinkle to that story.
It does, yeah. There was a study more recently, I think 2013, suggesting maybe the speech wasn't quite so secret and that it probably got to the West through a few different routes, possibly even helped along by some people within the Soviet system itself.
Ah, okay.
So Shin Bet's role was still important, no doubt, but maybe not the only source, like the legend sometimes suggests. It's a good reminder, intelligence history is tricky, narratives change.
Definitely. What other big early wins are mentioned?
Well, in counterspying, the capture of Israel Beer in 1961 was massive. This guy, Beer, he was really high up, lieutenant colonel in the reserves, respected security expert, even close to Ben-Gurion. So exposing him as a Soviet spy, that sent huge shockwaves. Showed vulnerability right at the top. He got 15 years in the end. And around the same time, they also caught Kurt Sidik, a Czech spy who was a professor at the Technion, a top university.
Really drives home that constant threat of infiltration they face.
Absolutely. And then there's that almost mythical deception before the Six-Day War in '67.
Operation Yated.
That's the one. Using the double agent, Rifat al-Gamal, it was brilliant, really. He fed Egypt totally wrong information about Israel's plans, made them think the attack would start with ground troops in the Sinai.
So the Egyptian Air Force was completely unprepared.
Completely. Sitting ducks on their airfields when the Israeli Air Force hit them first, wiped out most of it in hours. It's like a textbook case of successful deception that basically decided the war early on.
An incredible success. But as we know, it hasn't all been triumphs. There have been major crises, too. Let's talk about the COF 300 affair.
Right, CAV 300. Mid-'80s. This was a huge public scandal, really rocked the agency. Started with a bus hijacking by Palestinian militants.
Yeah.
After the hijackers were caught by Shin Bet, they died in custody.
Right, and then a cover-up attempt.
A serious one.
Yeah.
They even tried to pin the blame on a senior army officer. It all came out eventually. Huge public anger, investigations. The head of Shabak at the time, Abraham Shalom, had to resign. Really highlighted the need for accountability.
A really damaging episode, and it led directly to scrutiny of their interrogation methods, didn't it?
It did. That led to the 1987 Landau Commission. They investigated Shin Bet's interrogation techniques. Now, the commission was critical of some things, but it also, controversially, set out guidelines allowing what it called moderate physical pressure in certain situations.
Moderate physical pressure. What did that actually mean in practice?
It meant things like forcing prisoners into really painful positions for long periods, hoods over their heads, often dirty sacks, sleep deprivation. The commission argued it was sometimes necessary to get urgent security information.
Practices that human rights groups immediately called torture.
Exactly. And it got worse. A later official report, the Ben Porat report from '95, which only became public in 2000, it revealed something pretty shocking.
Which was?
That the Shin Bet had actually routinely gone beyond even those controversial Landau guidelines during interrogations. This report was the first time Israel officially admitted that Palestinian detainees faced torture during the first Intifada, 88 to 92.
Wow, an official admission of routine torture. That's huge.
A very dark chapter, and sparked massive debate about where the lines are ethically in counterterrorism.
And sadly, the crises didn't stop there. The assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin in 1995, another devastating failure.
Just terrible. And a massive intelligence failure for Shin Bet, because protecting the PM was their job. The really tragic part is they knew about the assassin Yigal Amir. They had even identified his intentions, generally speaking. An agent was supposed to be watching him. But that agent, somehow, assessed him as not being a credible threat. A catastrophic mistake. After the assassination, the director, Carmi Gilland, resigned immediately, took responsibility.
And the investigation afterward?
His Shamgar Commission, yeah. It found serious problems in the whole personal security unit. Failures in how they assess threats, shared information, their basic procedures.
And then there was the whole murky business with the informant, Ashai Raviv.
Yes, Raviv.
Yeah.
He was an informant for Shin Bet's Jewish unit, the one tracking Jewish extremists. But in the run-up to the assassination, he himself was apparently becoming increasingly violent, inciting violence.
So the informant was part of the problem.
Well, he was later cleared of directly inciting Rabin's murder in court. But his activities raised really serious questions about how Shin Bet recruited and managed informants, especially in extremist circles. Did they lose control? Were they overlooking danger signs? It was deeply unsettling.
Right. Amidst all this turmoil, though, they were still making big operational calls, like the targeted killing of Yahi Ayash, the Hamas bomb maker.
Yeah, that operation, putting a bomb in his cell phone, showed they were still very much active in using targeted killings against key militant figures. These are always complex operations, technically and ethically.
After Rabin, after all that shock and scrutiny, there must have been a huge push to rebuild.
Oh, definitely. Ami Ayalon, who came in next, he was a former Navy admiral, highly respected. He's widely credited with doing a lot to restore morale inside the agency and try to rebuild public trust.
And his successor.
Avi Dichter.
Yeah.
He continued that work and really focused on improving cooperation between Shin Bet, the IDF, and the police. That became crucial during the Al-Aqsa Intifada, which was a period of intense violence.
It's quite striking, though, when these former heads who spent careers in secrecy speak out publicly. The source mentions 4 ex-directors calling for a peace deal in 2003.
Yeah, that was unusual. 4 former Shin Bet chiefs making a joint public statement urging a political solution with the Palestinians. It carried a lot of weight, you know. These guys had been on the front lines of security for years. Their message was basically, security alone isn't enough. You need a political track, a unique perspective.
And then another shift towards, well, maybe not transparency, but public engagement. They launched a recruitment drive, even a blog, around 2007, 2008.
Right. That was a deliberate move. Partly image rehab after the controversies, partly a practical need. They needed new talent, especially tech people, IT experts, as intelligence work was changing rapidly.
A blog from Shin Bet agents.
Yeah, anonymous agents sharing stories about like the recruitment process, daily life, trying to demystify the agency a bit, make it seem more accessible, attract the right kind of people. It was quite a novel approach for them.
Okay, let's bring it closer to the present. Ronan Bar took over as director in 2021. His time has already seen some really significant events.
Hugely significant. After the Hamas attacks in October 2023, Director Barr very publicly took responsibility for the intelligence failures that allowed them to happen. That's a big deal, that level of accountability.
And there was more, wasn't there? A Shin Bet report suggesting government policy might have played a role.
That's what's reported, yes. A Shin Bet internal assessment apparently suggested that some Israeli government policies might have, perhaps unintentionally, emboldened Hamas before the attacks. That's a pretty explosive thing for the security agency to say about government policy.
Very sensitive indeed. And Director Barr has also issued warnings about threats from within Israeli society.
Yes, in August 2024, he reportedly warned the prime minister directly about rising violence by Jewish extremists against Palestinians in the West Bank. Called it a significant threat to Israel's internal security, even its existence. Shows the complex threats they're juggling.
And the relationship between Barr and the Prime Minister Netanyahu seems quite strained, based on this source.
Extremely strained, it seems. In April 2025, Barr reportedly filed an affidavit with the Supreme Court, making some really serious claims.
Mossad.
Alleging that Netanyahu demanded personal loyalty from him, tried to use the agency for political gain, specifically asking for surveillance on anti-government protesters. Barr also claimed Netanyahu tried to fire him over this. These are incredibly serious allegations about potential political interference in a vital security body.
Raises huge questions about independence and oversight, which it's important to say there are mechanisms for oversight, right?
Absolutely. There are checks. The Knesset, Israel's parliament, has overseen the budget since the early days. Since 2002, the Foreign Affairs and Security Committee specifically scrutinizes Shin Bet, checking if they're following the law, sticking to guidelines.
And legally?
The government's legal advisor has to approve certain activities. The political security cabinet gets direct, regular reports. And crucially, anyone detained by Shin Bet has the legal right to complain about their treatment. These systems exist to provide accountability, even if they're sometimes debated or seen as insufficient.
Okay, let's circle back to that really tough issue. Interrogation methods and the ongoing accusations of torture. It's been a constant shadow.
It really has. We talked about the Landau Commission allowing moderate physical pressure back in '87, highly controversial. Then the Ben Porat report admitting those lines were routinely crossed.
And the High Court ruling in 1999.
Yes, that was a landmark. The High Court explicitly banned specific methods Shin Bet had been using, like violent shaking, the painful Shabak position squat, the frog crouch. The court was clear. Shin Bet had no legal authority for these, even if they argued necessity.
A major legal pushback. But did it end the concerns?
Officially, Shin Bet says they only use psychological methods now. But
Hmm.
human rights groups, like Beta Selim, Amnesty International, they strongly disagree. They continue to accuse the agency of using physical methods that amount to torture under international law.
And complaints are still being filed.
Our source says petitions against Shin Bet have actually increased significantly since around 2012. And there are ongoing claims that many complaints about torture just aren't properly investigated independently. So, yeah, it remains a very live, very difficult issue.
Another key operational area for Shin Bet is their role in targeted killings.
Yes, they work extremely closely with the Israeli Air Force on these, targeting leaders, field commanders in groups like Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades, sometimes fatal-linked militants too.
Shin Bet provides the intel.
Absolutely critical intel, the timing, the exact location, and really importantly, confirming the identity of the target before the strike happens. That intelligence piece is central to their counterterrorism work.
The source also touches on a couple of incidents that raise slightly different concerns, maybe around civil liberties beyond direct terrorism cases.
That's right. There's the example of Salah Hajjihe from Physicians for Human Rights. He was detained, questioned about his organization's work, their clinics, their donors. That raised alarms about potentially targeting humanitarian workers. And also the case of Mohammed Omer, a Palestinian journalist who alleged serious mistreatment back in 2008 after returning to Gaza. Israel denied the abuse claims, pointed to their investigation process. But these incidents do highlight that ongoing tension between security actions and protecting basic civil liberties.
It's always kind of fascinating when these super secretive organizations pop up in popular culture.
It is, yeah. That documentary, The Gatekeepers, was really something. 6 former Shin Bet heads talking incredibly frankly about their time, the tough calls, the moral gray areas, give a rare glimpse inside.
And in fiction.
Well, there was a Shin Bet agent in a Tom Clancy video game, Splinter Cell. And you see depictions, often, heavily dramatized in films like Munich or The Engineer. Not always accurate, of course, but it shapes the public idea of the agency.
So as we wrap up this deep dive on the Shin Bet, what are the main things that stick out for you?
Well, you see this journey, right? From an urgent need in a new state under threat, growing from an IDF branch into this absolutely central intelligence pillar. Its structure mirrors the threats, terror, spies, protecting leaders, and its history is just complex. Amazing successes, yes, but also really deep, damaging controversies, especially around interrogation and accountability.
And those recent allegations about political interference really add another layer.
Absolutely. That underscores this constant tension between security needs and democratic principles. It's never easy.
That motto again, Marin Viloyere, the unseen shield, it perfectly captures it. They work in secret to protect, but that very secrecy creates unavoidable questions about oversight, about transparency in a democracy.
Exactly. Which brings us to the final thought for you, the listener. When you have an agency like Shin Bet, acting as that unseen shield, holding significant power, operating largely out of sight, how does a democratic society constantly navigate that balance? Balancing the undeniable need for security against the equally vital protection of individual rights. It's a question with no easy answer, one that democracies constantly have to wrestle with.